Hi everybody, this is the last of the kind of introductory Illustrator tutorials. We're going to talk about converting text into graphic objects that you can edit like a shape, and also about creating clipping masks. So we talked before about text and paragraphs, and I'm going to type in the word "the" and make it a big font size. And I'm going to give it a, I'm going to turn it into, I don't know, Times Roman or something. It's not Trajan Pro, Times Roman. And I'm going to make it actually even bigger by clicking in here and typing in 200, just so that you can see very clearly what we're working with, or even 400. I want some really big letters here to work with. So type in Illustrator until you do something to it otherwise is what's considered a parametric component, right? So I can still go back into this and change the letter. I can change it to there instead of the. I can change it to Thor. I can change the letters. I can also change the font and the size and the color, the fill and the stroke, all of those sorts of things. What I can't do is some of the things that I would be able to do if it were a shape, right? Because it's still a parametric element, I can only control it in the ways of kind of type, right? I can only change the type characteristics of it. What Illustrator lets you do though is convert type once you're done making all of the changes. And I'm gonna just make this back to the, so I don't have to work with the word Thor for the rest of the tutorial. It lets you convert this into an outline. So under type and create outlines, if I click on that, my object now becomes something that is kind of editable. And sorry, I just ungrouped it, Control-Shift-G. I can edit, I can turn one letter into a color, I can turn one letter into an outline. I can start using it as an object, which will become more helpful to us when we start getting into clipping masks. I can basically treat it as a vector object, which is something that I want to be able to do at times in Illustrator. You can also start warping the text. Not that that's something that I particularly recommend, but you can. So if I give these guys a fill instead of a stroke, I could go in and take the bottom of the H and expand it down. Or I can take out the middle of the E. I can take out the middle of the E by deleting these anchor points. I can do all sorts of different types of things. I'm going to undo those so I'm back working with the real letters. I can also, we haven't really covered this in other shapes yet, so let me show you with a rectangle. If I have an object and I want to kind of cut it or change it or do something to it, I can, let's say I want to cut this line at a diagonal, or cut this box rectangle at a diagonal. My line doesn't have any stroke. If I want to use this as kind of a cutting object and split the object below into two parts, I can object with this line selected, object path and divide objects below. Sorry, path and then divide objects below. It's going to take that line where the kind of diagonal was going through, and it's going to let me split that object into two separate pieces. So that might be something that I would want to do with text at some point. If I want to be able to split these guys in half and turn the top. Let's see again. This doesn't have any stroke to it. Object path, divide objects below. Now I can work with the top or the bottom of these letters individually. So if I want to turn the bottom of them into, I don't know, blue, and the top into brown, or if I want to delete part of a letter or something like that, I can start treating these letters the same way as I would a shape or a vector or a line or something like that. So that's pretty handy. Excuse me. And again, one of the things that this will be helpful with is with clipping masks. So I'm going to go back to have these letters just be outlines. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to place an image. So File, Place, and I think I have one in here called Grass. Yep. So place that. and I'm going to scale it so that it's bigger than my letters. And let's say I want to take an object, a shape, let's say a circle. I'm going to draw a circle on top of this and make a part of that grass image, show up in a circle and get rid of the rest of it. So the way to do that is pretty simple. It's called creating a clipping mask. So I just use the clipping mask option and I can do that. What it's taking is the shape of the front object and using it as kind of a frame, and then it's filling the back object with that frame. So I have two things. I have the stack order where I want them. I have the shape on top and the thing I want to be shown through the shape behind. And then I just choose Object, Clipping Mask, Make, or the shortcut for it is Command or Control 7. You can double click into the object and go in, and you can see that here now we're in the original object, in layer 1, in the clipping group, in the linked file, and go in and start adjusting a little bit of that once you're in the file, right? So once you're in the clipping object, I can go in and change, where that frame is, and if I double click out of it, I'm looking at a different part of the image now. And you can go in and start making those adjustments once you've already clipped it, or you can undo it and do it again, those sorts of things. You can also, if you want to go back to the original two objects, go into Object, Clipping Mask, Release, and it will turn it back into the two original shapes. Although our front shape has lost its graphic properties, I can give it a fill again. So you can imagine that now you can do the same thing with your letters. So if I want to, I need to have these guys as a compound path, so I could do it one letter at a time, right? I could take the T, clipping mask, make, and have a grass-shaped T, or T-shaped piece of grass. But if I want to do all of them at the same time, I have to turn them into a compound path so that Illustrator understands that I want them all to be the kind of frame. So with the 3 letter forms selected, Object, Compound Path, Make. It doesn't look like it changed anything, but it treats them differently. Now I can select the back image, Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and I'll have the word the in the kind of grass image rather than in the black. So you can also alternately, you can put a shape in front of the letter forms. So if for some reason I wanted to crop this down so that I'm just looking at that portion of the letters, again I want to make sure that this has been turned into a compound path. I want the shape to be in the front because that's the frame that I'm going to be looking through. I'm going to select both, Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and it will crop down the word into the outline of the shape that I put on top of it. The tutorials go through step by step creating kind of a reverse clipping mask. So if instead of using the type as a clipping mask for the grass, and so I get a V-shaped grass, if I wanted to cut that out from the background image, the tutorial, the handout goes through kind of that step by step. It's a little bit more complicated. It's a lot more steps. So I will let you go through that on your own if you are interested, and I'm happy to help you with any questions that you might have about it in class.